Welcome everyone to our PICTAS members only webinar. We are excited to have Franz Herbert talking to us today about the importance of monitor calibration. So this is the first of 3 sessions that Franz will be running for us. So sign up for the next 2 because they're going to be equally as important as this one today. So monitor calibration is a very important subject, especially if you are producing artwork that's going to be printed, for example. So we need to make sure what we see on screen is what we get printed. I hope that's right, Franz. We want to ensure our decisions on editing photographs, for example, come out the way we'd hoped. So what's on view on your screen is what you want to see on the resulting printed image. That's why it's an important part of our process. So Franz is going to be discussing the basics of monitor calibration, and the importance of colour accuracy. Franz will also be providing some tips and tricks for getting the best results. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you've got any questions, Franz is actually happy to answer them as he goes along, or you can ask them at the end of the webinar. So please type them into the Q&A box and Franz will answer them as and when he can. So I'm now going to hand you over to Franz and enjoy our monitor calibration webinar. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm coming to you from the western end of Austria. So good evening to Europeans and good morning to the Americas. I'm trying to share my screen actually right now. Terry, how do I do that? I click on share screen.
Yes, you should be able to, yeah.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Try it again.
Okay. Here we go. Excellent. Okay. I've been creating color management applications for about 30 years, and this is my most recent one. It's called Basic Color Display 6. So Nikki already brought it up. Why would we even want to calibrate monitors? Well, if you're in a creative business and you've taken your artwork to your art director and your images look entirely different on his monitor or her monitor, then you know. Or if you're in a room full of people, everybody has a monitor and every monitor looks differently unless they are calibrated. So I'm going to walk you through my attempt at solving this problem. There are many monitor calibration solutions on the market today. Often you get one that comes with your monitor, and that's typically will only work with monitors of that manufacturer. Same thing as comes with measurement instruments. You need a measurement instrument in order to calibrate a monitor. That costs money and it makes it a much more complex topic. I've tried to make this application work with all monitors and with as many instruments as possible. And we're talking about consumer grade and prosumer grade. Almost all of the instruments that we support, they are in the price range of somewhere 50 euros to 2,000, 2,500 or so. The application display 6 here will automatically show you the monitors that are connected. So here we see I have an ASO CG246 connected here. And you see this little monitor symbol. ASO is kind of like the leader in the graphic arts with high-end monitors. And we have a special SDK, software developer toolkit, that we can interface with the guts of about at least 50 different ASO monitors. And when you hover over the symbol, you can see the functions in the monitor that we support. So there's brightness, there's RGB gain, embedded lookup tables, In this particular one, there's a 3D lookup table, a color matrix. It also has an embedded sensor, which is this instrument here that comes out of the frame, and it can self-calibrate, and it is connected with a USB cable. That's a requirement in order to be able to talk to this monitor. The lookup tables, the embedded lookup tables of the ISO series are 12-bit to 16-bit. And that's the beauty, that you do not need to change the video lookup tables in your graphics card, which would possibly reduce the complete color space that you're working with. I have another measurement instrument connected here. That's an X-Rite i1 Display Pro. That's one of the most common lower end devices that a lot of people are using. And I'm going to use this because it's a lot faster than the internal instrument. The i1 Display Pro is a colorimeter. It means it's kind of like a camera. It has RGB filters, and therefore, depending on different backlights, it comes with different calibration matrices. In this case, I'm going to use a white LED matrix for the calibration to give me the best results for this particular monitor. The application comes with a bunch of what we call workflows that we go into the details afterwards. Is the terminology for viewing and accepting and judging a print, whether it's from an inkjet print or from a printing press on the monitor. That's what soft proofing is called, as opposed to hard proofing, which is physical paper. In the printing industry, the standard is P50. That means the light is 5,000 Kelvin, which is a whole bit warmer than the 65, which is used for the internet. I'm going to just start right now. I will get my monitor measurement. Ideally, you'd put this in the center of your monitor because often there's a fall off. I will show you this little device right here, right now. Has a little lens here. And I'm going to hang this up over the monitor and we get started. For the luminance, I specified 160 candela per square meter, which is kind of a soft proofing. It is an ISO standard so a lot of people are actually soft proofing at D50 with 160 candela, which is also called nits. So 160 nits. And you see already the white that we had was way too blue. So we're visualizing what's happening actually in the gains in the monitor. We're taking the blue way back and the green back. And here now we have a diagram that shows you chromaticities. They work in little x and little y. And you can see the 4 color coordinate system with blue, green, yellow, red. The point in the circle is what we're trying to achieve, which is D50, and we've already achieved that. And you see now we're actually measuring a 30-step grayscale to compute the tonal response that we have selected. I have selected L star. L star is the lightness of the LAB color model. And then that's the most visually uniform, perceptually uniform color space that we do have today. And you can see now how this L star curve looks, and that is downloaded into the monitor right now. And we're going along the gray axis on 10 points and fine tuning, making sure that the luminance and the color temperature along this grayscale is absolutely perfect. We work with very, very tight tolerances. So we have a really high demand on what the monitor has to do here. This instrument works very, very fast, and the communication with the monitor is also very fast. So we're getting through this very, very quickly. As you can see on the right side, the RGB values under here, and what we're measuring is called XYZ, and X is relative similar to red, Y is the luminance, is green, and Z is the blue channel. And you can see now here, the black triangle are actually the red, green, and blue corner points of the color space of this monitor. The green one is Adobe RGB, and the blue one is P3 DCI, which is a kind of an unofficial standard. Every single display that Apple ships, every iPhone, every iPad, every iMac, every external display comes set to P3 color space. And companies like Samsung have followed that. In the graphics world, Adobe RGB is still very strong. A lot of photographers use Adobe RGB. I'm calibrating to full gamut, so I want, in this particular case, utilize as much of the color space, all of the color space possible. The small red triangle in here is actually sRGB, which is what low-end monitors typically have as their color space. And that a lot of the imagery that's on the internet is actually in sRGB color space. Okay, so we've created a profile and we're validating this profile right now. You can see the measurement points and you see everything is green. So we passed with flying colors. Here is actually a 3D view of our profile compared to Adobe RGB. You can see, you saw it here before as well, that the green part here of the Adobe color space RGB is outside of this monitors. And here you can see it also in 3D. Also on the red, there's some missing. I can look at how this looks compared to sRGB, and you can see that this monitor is much larger than sRGB. We see it here also in volume. Coverage of sRGB is 99.94% plus 37% outside of it. As opposed to Adobe RGB, we have 94% coverage, but we still have 15% more. If we click on the report here, then we get a report that shows us the results in detail. So we can look at the video LUTs. We can see we wanted to 160 nits, we got 159.5. The black luminance is 0.22, which is excellent. You can see here the color space, profile volume compared to P3 DCI, also this 86%. And then very detailed validation results. So we nailed our D50. The measurement error is called delta E, and that's a color error. One delta E is about the amount that where we can see a color difference. So if we are at values under 1, then there's a good chance that we cannot see a difference in the color that we're trying to get and the color that we see at all. So we see here the maximum is 1.4. So this is a super, super excellent profile. Okay, so this was our first profile. Now the question is, what is a monitor profile? I'm going to go to my system preferences here and go to the displays, and shows me here my arrangement. Here are my 2 displays. This is my active one. And if I go to color, it shows me my active profile is CG246 1 softproof. So profile that we created got automatically set as my active monitor profile. And if I open that, I can actually see this. I'm on a Macintosh running Mojave. A little later, we're going to go to an M1 Apple. The software runs also on the Windows exactly the same way. Looking at profiles and stuff is a little trickier on Windows. That's why I'm demonstrating it on the Mac. So here we have tags. We have a white point. These are the XYZ values of D50. Here we have the triangle that we have in our graph as well. Here's the total response. And this is the video LUTs. And here we have a tag. Sorry, we have a tag where we actually store the measurements of the validation. And at the top, it says validation passed. So our software always knows that here, that's why we get a green check mark here, that the software passed, the profile passed, sorry. One more thing I forgot to show you. So the actual, these 9 points actually make up a 3D matrix besides curves that are being used to convert RGB values into monitor, into independent color space. XYZ is a device independent color space. Every colorimeter measures in XYZ, and then from there into monitor RGB space. So if I convert an image that has maybe Adobe RGB as the assigned source profile, the Adobe RGB profile converts an image pixel to XYZ. This monitor profile will convert this XYZ value to monitor RGB and make the color look correct on screen. So the fact that we can do all this in hardware makes this the very best and most powerful solution. And the beauty is also that you can switch between profiles or workflows completely. So if I switch, for example, to the video workflow, you can see this has a much, much smaller color space than this one. And I say activate. Now my screen turns bluish white because I've created this to D65 parameters. And if I work to create content for film and video, most people actually work in Rec 709, and Rec 709 has the same corner points as sRGB does. So if I want to take a look at the profile here, I have a profile review mode. You can see now that we are in D65. This line is called the Planckian locus, and that's when you warm up a black body, it starts emitting light, very yellowish light. So that could be something like candlelight, which is 2000 to 3000 Kelvin or tungsten. And as the temperature goes up, the light goes bluer and bluer and bluer, and it moves along this line. It gets bluer. There's no upward limit, really. Here we have the lookup tables. You see they look very different than the ones that we had before. This is the color space we're trying to emulate. And you can see here how well we got there. As opposed to before, we had this huge triangle. Here's the evaluation. We do have a problem in blue. We are not quite getting there in blue, which we will see here in the 3D model as well. Actually, here we need it so we can see it when we compare it to sRGB. So the beauty is we can very quickly switch between these color spaces, and that's really a task that today graphic artists and photographers need to be able to switch seamlessly from working for print to working for film and other possibilities. This program also does DICOM calibration. DICOM is a medical standard that has its own standard set. So you could set your monitor into a DICOM monitor just in the same easy way. There's one other set of monitors that we derive similarly as the ASO monitors, and that is the NEC monitors. NEC has been in this space for a very long time. They have now moved out of the creative arts. They're focusing more on large format monitors, but there's still a lot of very good high quality and wide gamut NEC monitors out there. And we drive them through a SDK from NEC in a very similar manner and very similar capabilities as we have with ASO monitors. Then there is a really old standard that's called DDC. That stands for Display Data Channel, and that came about when the monitors were first hooked up to computers and this plug and play standard was implemented. Every monitor has an EEPROM where it tells its salient information to the computer, so the computer knows what to do with it. For example, these red, green, and blue chromaticities that we measure here, they are already in the monitor or something like them. They're typically not as accurate as what we measure, but the computer can make a base profile, what we call a factory profile, based on the information that it gets out of the monitor. The beauty is that most monitors, like this is a Dell UP2516D that has DDC. Sometimes you have to turn it on the OSD, and on the Mac, every graphics card can do DDC. On Windows, most better ones. And if I have DDC, there's two options, but sometimes I can only do the brightness, then you would get a grayscale DDC icon here, or you can do brightness and gains, which is the case here. So that's the most important stuff, that I can set my brightness and my red, green, and blue points to drive the guns optimally. So I set the white point, and then I only have to set the lookup tables, and the lookup tables then will be in the video LUTs, in the graphics card. So here we see in review mode, if I go and look at my lookup tables here, they look similar to before, but now they reside in the video lookup tables, not in the monitor itself. And that would show actually if I activate this, I'll bring my second here. If I open this profile, there will be a VZGT tag, and you can see that reflects the curves that we saw before. The endpoints are 100% because the red, green, and blue points are set with the DDC parameters. Okay, so now let's dive into the parameters that we actually have available. Sorry, let me turn this off. Here we go. We have an editor where we show the workflows that get installed at runtime. They have up to 6 components. So the first step, what we did was the so-called calibration. It's similar to doing it like a linearization of a printer. We get the monitor into a repeatable space with a specific white point and with specific tonal adjustment. I have 3 modes here for calibration. Automatic does everything. The fast mode skips the fine tuning. And then I have a manual mode, which I will show you later. If I can't control anything automatically from the computer on the monitor, I will bring up a dialog that helps you set the monitor white point and brightness as good as possible. The next thing is tonal response. So we've seen an L-star curve. We've seen the HDTV rec curve. There's straight gamma curves, P3, NTSC DICOM. The bottom line is, if you are on a computer that uses color management, then it doesn't really matter that much. If a program uses a monitor profile, the tonal curve that's embedded will automatically be used. So then it only makes a small difference maybe in the black end. So if you have images that have a lot of shadow detail in really, really dark areas, then you might see a difference with different tonal response curves. On the Macintosh now, all Apple ships with 10-bit frame buffers. So that also helps if the monitor that you're connecting can also do 10-bit. In this case with my ASO, since the lookup tables internally are 10-bit, it's okay that the monitor frame buffer itself is only 8-bit. Where it does matter, what tonal response you have is if you use programs that do not use ICC monitor profiles. For example, there are DICOM viewers that are in grayscale and they don't use profiles. So they really rely on the tonal response being set correctly. Also in the film industry, video industry, there are quite a few programs that depend on that you set the correct color space and the correct tonal response so that your videos look accurate, especially on Windows. In the white point, I can go up and specify Kelvin. So D50 is 5,000, is almost exactly 5,000 Kelvin. There's a small difference, but that's color science. I can set it to anything you want. I can do a black body temperature, set it here with a slider. I could also specify it with little x, little y. That's the scale, the chromaticities that we saw in the diagram. I could also do it in UV, which the video people do often want. I can set it from copied from another profile. I can get it from an emissive measurement, or I can even measure a light boost. The next one I'm going to look at is the profile itself. So the profile, there is an ICC version 4 and an ICC version 2. From our perspective, it makes no difference. We add the tags that are new in the version 4, which keep track of when you deviate from D50. The whole ICC profile was designed around D50. Only the very latest ICC profile version that is not being used by commercial products yet goes to a spectral color space and connection space. The big one is matrix-based or 3D LUT-based. Apple kind of screwed that up for a while. It is possible still now again to do a LUT-based profile, but Apple says it's not really supported by the imaging pipeline in the graphics card. We still use it. It doesn't give us the very best result, but we use it when we emulate another color space. So what I did before, as I showed you, when I make on a wide gamut monitor, I create a smaller color space for video, for example. Here's chromatic adaptation. Color science says, okay, if you work in D50, but you calibrate your monitor to something else, you need to adapt the color space to your color temperature towards D50. Here we go. You can specify in a variety of ways how you want to name your monitor profile. You can put your calibrations in the name, profile settings, your sensor, and so on. Now you can specify on how you want to validate. We have, for example, there's an ISO 1486061 soft proofing standard. We have a profile accuracy target that contains over almost 400 points for validation. And you can also pick profile accuracy tolerances, which are quite tight. We have, let me show you this. Next to our application, we have a link. All these settings are stored in a folder structure. Here are our reports. Here are our jobs, workflows. We have a jobs folder. And we have templates where you can create your own validation target. This is a text file in a so-called CGATS format, and it will be really easy for you. They're all tab delimited to create or customize your validation targets. The accuracy targets are XML files, which is also text-based, a little harder to read, and but it's also something that is very easily done by yourself, by hand. Okay, now if you want to emulate a color space, which is what we did for the video, we can actually go in here and say, I want, for example, these are printing speed. I want to emulate Rec 709 is what we did. Or if you want a ProStar, that's a huge color space. There are other color spaces, but you have to have a big enough monitor. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to emulate a color space that's larger than what the monitor can do. Here are video profiles. There's different versions of P3. There's Rec 709. That's the next new standard, Rec 2020, which is huge, has an absolutely huge color space, but there's still also SMPTE. Here, that makes sense also that you emulate the profile color space. And this is really where emulation comes in a lot. So you could create a profile that emulates a printer space, for example, a newspaper space that is very, very small. And then by switching to a profile like that, you have an instant soft proof on your screen. So you don't have to have Photoshop and know how to use all the different settings to set up a perfect emulation of your monitor. And along with that, with emulation goes evaluation. So color space, it automatically evaluates how good your monitor profile now is for the color space that you're trying to emulate. And we have the similar concept here with evaluation targets and evaluation tolerances. And here there's even more standards, German standards, international standards, ID Alliance. And then we have a last category, that's light. Light is really important. If you calibrate your monitor to D50, it's very, very important that you do not sit with your monitor next to an open window in your office where you have bluish daylight coming in, and it would make your monitor look yellowish, brownish. Our eyes calibrate to the most bluish white that we can see. And so for that, it is important in the printing standards, they always specify that you have very, very low ambient light when you work in printing, soft proofing for printing. So we offer to measure the ambient light, also to measure your viewing light, because the quality of that and the color temperature of that is really, really important. And we drive certain viewing booths that have USB connections, and we can actually also calibrate if we have one of those viewing booths active. I'm going to demonstrate that to you. So once you specify your new workflows, you can save that. You can disable or enable any of these existing ones, and you can just move them around and only look at the ones that you really care for. Here's another interesting option, uniformity. You can also measure what the uniformity of your monitor is, either 5x5 patches, 5x3, or 3x3. And another high-end feature here is compare sensors. There is a base version of Display 6 that's very inexpensive. And then there is a Pro version. And these features here, uniformity, compare sensors, are only part of the Pro version. So I'm showing you the Pro version right now. Okay, next, let's take a look at light. So here you see that this says used moduli. So I actually have an overhead light that has a D50 LED, a D65 LED, and a UV LED connected. And my program automatically sees that. Otherwise, it would say viewing light here. Now I'm actually going to connect a spectrometer or spectrophotometer, they used to be called. Spectrometers can actually measure wavelength. And then the wavelength is converted to XYZ using formulas, using filters in mass from a standard observer. And the beauty of that is that you don't have to use any calibration matrix. A spectrometer will identify and correct for the light automatically. This is an X-Rite i1 Pro 2, and it shows me it's spectral. And I'm going to actually calibrate this modulite. I have to switch to the light. I can specify here when I leave the locks open at runtime what I would like to do. And this is now going to automatically calibrate the light to the color space and the luminance that is in my active profile. So I have to calibrate. Now, this is my device, and I have to put a little diffuser for light on camera. Then I put it underneath of the light and say measure. You can see here, we're going to see the spectrum, and you can see that the spikes of the LED, and it goes to D50 and then to D65. So it measures both ends and selects the D65 one. We can go back here and check. And it says like it's 4800K, and the matching lux is the measurement for light is green. So we have a good calibration. I can turn the UV on and off and turn the whole light off. As you see, it's to the left of me. And now I'm done. What I would like to show you as well, I'm going to disconnect this viewing booth and just measure the monitors with the spectro to show you what the backlight of the monitor actually is. So let me restart display. It takes a little while to come up because it has to actually communicate with the monitor. With the DDC monitor, it has to test it. This is a fairly slow serial communication. So it sends a message, say, hey, can you do this brightness, and then change it and tell me what's the brightness, and only then say, oh yeah, okay, I understand, you can do it. See here now it says viewing light. And I'm going to, if I click on here, it just lets me validate the light. So that's a shortcut, just like on the left side. If I click on the left side here, it's a shortcut for validating my monitor profile. Okay, so I'm going to actually measure, I'm pointing the spectro at my ASO right now. This has a so-called GBR LED. We're also automatically calculating the color rendering index, which of course doesn't make much sense here for a monitor. It makes sense for a viewing light. So the standard says that you have to have a light with a very, very high color rendering index, close to 100. And there's another standard to measure light, is the TM3015, which we're using as well. And we put in the report. And now I'm switching over to my Dell, and that has a WLED. And you can see that the spectrum is significantly different. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pointing at a red square. So that's the spectrum for a red. Now a green. So there's still a red spike in there, and now a blue. So you get a picture of how a spectrometer works and how you can use it in this application. One problem we have with using two different monitors with two different backlights is that the math does not work perfectly simulating what our eyes see. So if I calibrate my ASO and my Dell to exactly the same color temperature, I do not see the white exactly the same. For that purpose, we have a feature in here called a white point edit. So best used when using a good grayscale image. So I put this grayscale image on my other monitor. I put it right here on the side, make a little space, but I don't think you can see what happens actually when if I go down here, for example, I say, no, make this redder. And now my monitor is turning more and more reddish, but it's actually, sorry, it's the monitor that you're not seeing. So that doesn't make sense. Let me do it on the monitor that I am sharing. I'll switch to soft proof. Takes a few seconds to change it. Then I go in here, go into my white point edit. Okay, let's try this again. So, of course, this is way too extreme, but it illustrates basically how I can, in very, very small steps, make my monitor redder, more yellow, more cyan, more green, more blue. And then if I do the same, if it matches, if I have the same grayscale image on both monitors and it matches, then I can save this correction, and this correction then is saved for this instrument for this particular monitor and can be used over and over again. So I'm going to reset. my correction. And okay, next thing I would like to demonstrate to you is how to calibrate an XDR display from Apple. These are the new displays that they came out with, and they have XDR displays now on the M1 MacBook Pros. And Apple has made it a little tricky to calibrate these. So here I'm on my MacBook Pro 16-inch. This is running Monterey. And what I have to do here, you can only set your profile with the color sync utility here. What I need to do here is I need to specify a preset. So I'm going to create a preset that I will do P3, D65, and 200 nits. So before we did 160, I want to do 200. This display can actually go up to over 1,000, but not over the entire screen. So here I say limit luminance to full screen capability, and I call this P3, D65, 200. And it shows me the little X and little Y values for D65 here. So I need to remember these because I need to add them in later, as you can see. So now I'm going to hook up my little colorimeter to the other computer. And here it is. There's a PFS phosphor entry in the calibrations, which is specifically for the XDR displays. And I'm picking now a workflow that I've set up the same way, D65, 200 luminance, sRGB tonal curve, and a manual calibration. So you'll see what that does. So now I start, say, measure. Okay, it says 490 candela, so that's not what I asked for. Let me go back here. Customize preset. I want this in the menu. I'm going to make an, I'm going to delete that and redo it. Okay, I think I forgot to set this here. The 200 is my luminance I want here. P3, D65, 200, and save preset. Let's see now what we have. Okay, so actually we're quite good, actually quite excellent, 199.6 and 6500. If that weren't the case, I could customize now. I could fine tune it, sorry. And for that, I have to put in the values here. So measured 0.3124 and 0.3284, 199.5. And then my target was 0.3127, 0.3290, and 200. And then if I say okay, it actually changes the backlight. And now you see I'm 200 and 6,500. So I am exactly on that. And I can say accept and now run through the whole calibration here on this monitor, on this internal laptop display, this XDR display. This is a 10-bit display, so all the lookup tables actually are in the graphics card, but they are being used in 10 bits. So this goes through the same process here. We can see the fine tuning and so on. I'm not going to let this run through. We've seen this before. The last thing actually I want to show you, when I quit basic color display, we have a little helper coming up on the top. You don't see the icon. You will see it in a second here. I have a workflow status, shows me my monitors. It shows me all the profiles that I have. I can specify in the preferences how long I want my profiles to be valid. The default is 2 weeks. Some people don't calibrate again for 6 months. You can specify that yourself. But in here, when it nears the end of the validation time, it goes yellow, and then at some point it will go red, and it'll tell you what to do. And you can switch. So I can, right here on the Dell, for example, or I can, let me go back. I can switch between soft proof and video. And again, all the parameters are being reset. It goes from D50 to D65, from a full gamut color space to the small Rec 709 color space. And in a few seconds, I'm ready to switch from editing movies to working on print. You can download the software from our website. basiccolor.de. Here we can switch to English. You go to products, and then here, click on the product, say download Win, download Mac, and you can, in the software, let me show you, switch back to that. I'll show you the licensing dialog where it guides you to the website where our licensing server is. You can register there and you get a fully featured 2-week trial. And we also have a special deal for members only. We're selling the Pro version instead of 256 euros. For members, we're selling it to you for 150 euros. So that is a substantial discount. And I hope some of you will find the software useful Here you can see the license interface. If I go to licensing, here you can click to create your Basic Color account. And then this is our licensing server. You can enter your credentials and then go back to putting your email password. And you can see here that you would instantly get like a little check mark that you logged into the licensing server, and then your tryout license is automatically downloaded. And you can see here how long your license is good for. So once you're logged in, then you on the right side here, you can click the test license button, and then you get to play with the full featured pro version for 2 weeks. Okay, this concludes my presentation about Basic Color Display 6. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Does this software come with also the hardware to measure the monitor and then the ambient, or it's only the software?
It's only the software. The i1 Display Pro is probably the best low-cost instrument that does both. It has a little switch, a little cap, that's a diffuser. So in this mode, it measures light, and in this mode, it measures emissive. The Spider X from Data Color is also a very common instrument. It's less expensive significantly, but on the light, it can only measure luminance, not the color temperature.
Franz, if you stop screen sharing, we can see your we can see
yes.
better actually, rather than
where do I here we stop share. Okay,
that's it. Perfect. I don't think there's any more questions. Maybe if there is, we can open up the mic to anybody. I think that was great, Franz. It was a hell of a lot of information that you were giving everybody there. So there doesn't seem to be any questions at the minute. So thank you for the webinar. I'm sure the next two are going to be equally amazing. And that offer that you've given the PicTest members is incredible. So guys, if you want to take Franz up on that, that would be absolutely amazing. And I think that's it. We don't seem to have any more questions for you today. So thank you, Franz. That was brilliant.
Well, thank you for your time and patience and listening to me. And I hope to see you a month from now when we talk about camera profiling, for high-end camera profiling.
That sounds great. We look forward to that. Thanks, Franz.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.